Council regular meeting to order. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Hutchings,
Present.
Nelson, Councilmember Nelson,
Present.
Carey,
Present.
Chilson,
Present.
Parker, Ruffridge, Student Representative Knowles.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Vice Mayor Parker.
I move to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councilmember Hutchings.
Mayor Whitney, I request the following change. I would like to move to amend the January 31st, 2022 special council meeting minutes by substitute of January 31st, 2022 special council meeting minutes, and I request that the approval of the substitute minutes remain on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any other changes to, oops, do I need a second for that? Nope. The clerk was shaking her head and said no. If there's no objection, we'll consider that substitute change. Any other changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll consider the consent agenda and consent agenda passed by unanimous consent. Well, never mind. I'll go down to, would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Approval of minutes, January 26, 2022 council meeting minutes. Substitute January 31st, 2022 council special meeting minutes. New business ordinances for introduction. Ordinance 2022-002, amending Soldotna Municipal Code 2.28.030, types of employment to create a new category for on-call employees. Introduced by the city manager. Public hearing to be held on February 23rd, 2022. Ordinance 2022-003, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $60,000 in the Utility System Capital Improvements Fund for forgivable loans from the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. Introduced by the city manager. Public hearing to be held on February 23rd, 2022. New business resolutions, Resolution 2022-004, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Anchorage Sand and Gravel Company Incorporated in the amount of $45,000 for the rubber mulch purchase, introduced by the city manager. Resolution 2022-005, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Moore's Landscaping, LLC, in the amount of $62,443 for the Memorial Park 2022 landscaping, introduced by the city manager. New business other, action memorandum 2022-002, request for an excused absence from the February 9, 2022 regular city council meeting from Councilmember Ruffridge. And that is your consent agenda.
Are there any public comments on any item of the items just read by the clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. I see no one here in the chambers wishing to speak, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. Having no one wishing to speak, the approval of the agenda and consent agenda is back before the council. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved by unanimous consent. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, and that will be item 4, public comments and presentations. Items other than those appearing on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker, 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing star 9 on your telephone. I see no one here in the chambers wishing to speak, and I see no hands raised. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5, Assembly and Legislative Report. Are there any representatives from the borough or the state in attendance who would like to speak? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. PAP users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing star 9 on your telephone. I see no one in the council chambers wishing to speak, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. Moving on to item number 6, administrative reports. Year-end reports. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. This is an activity that we do every year. Each department had compiled a memo that's in the packet summarizing their accomplishments and in some cases outlining different projects they worked on over the year as a way to wrap up what we did in the last calendar year. And one of the things that's new this year, we've added our goals for the current year we're in. So each of the memos now can be considered a year-end report for 2021, but also a list of goals that each department head is focused on within their department. And some of them are projects, some of them are professional development related, but as a way to share with you and the public what everybody's going to be focused on for the year coming up. And I want to thank the department heads for putting all the work into these reports. I always enjoy it, and they spend a lot of time really looking back to be able to capture this information for you. And so I appreciate all the effort that goes into that. And that would conclude my report. Thank you.
Yep. Any questions for the city manager? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. As a follow-up, there was one lay-down item to the packet, which was the memo from Mr. Zarneski. The original version of his memo that went in the packet did not include any goals, and it wasn't because he doesn't have goals, it's because I gave you the wrong version of his memo. So apologies for that, and I believe that was available as a lay-down item through the clerk's office. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the city manager? Seeing, go ahead, Vice Mayor Parker.
I want to thank all the departments for the reports, and it was an extremely busy year, and there was a lot done. There was a lot accomplished, and we're fortunate to have such a dynamic group working here at the City of Soldotna.
We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, is number 7, public hearings, and we have none for this evening. Item 8 is new business, and I believe everything under new business was on the consent agenda. So we will now move on to number 9, mayor and council reports. My report, I'll make this brief tonight. Last week, a couple of weeks ago, I attended an event over at the Montessori School where that school received a National Blue Ribbon Award, the only that's issued by the federal government. They were one of 325 schools in the entire U.S. that received that award, and the only school in the state of Alaska who received that award in 2021. The Montessori school portion of it put on an event there at the school, and it was very well attended. Family and participants from the community, myself, the school board, and the city, the school superintendent. So it was a good honor, great honor to be there, and I congratulate that school, the students, and all the teachers who made that award possible for them. So thank you on that. I'd also like to thank all the department heads for that terrific year-end report. Everyone did a good job this year, an excellent job as usual, and the report is very informative. I'm hoping that it gets out to the community so people see what their local government is doing and what the employees that they have working for them are doing and what a great job they are. We are into this time of year where we've got a little bit more snow than we need. Not just a little bit, quite a bit. And I think we are running into some issues. I've spoken with the city manager. We've run into some problems with some of our side streets getting a little too filled up with snow. And they're working on a project on how they can get some of that snow out of the side streets and get them back to a regular 2-lane road instead of a very narrow 1-lane. But it's been an unusual year. I believe the city manager will probably be bringing us an ordinance next week for a budget change because we've probably blown through the snow removal budget for the year. So it's kind of more of like a normal winter around here. So that's all I have. We'll move on to council reports and boards and commissions. Soldotna Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Councilmember Hutchings.
Well, it was a short meeting and a little bit longer work session. So the meeting comprised of 3 different plats that had combination lots made in, they had 2 or 3 lots that they were making into 1 lot. So that was Paces Pleasant Haven up by Addie Camp. There was Gulf Acres, which was Schussler's, and then there was one along Riverview Drive where the house was in the 2nd lot, so they combined it as one. Most of the time was spent on the desires for people to have a walking city, although this year wouldn't be very conducive to a walking city. But they went through the list of things that they wanted to encourage to be brought into the city center and those that they would discourage. So they had 3 different sections. Not saying that they would take away anything that's already here that they don't like, but I'm sure that they would encourage change. So it was an interesting exercise. And I had another meeting about an hour into that, so they were still working on that project. So I'm sure John Cisnarski will bring the list forward at the next planning meeting. And that was it.
Thank you. Next one will be Soldotna Chamber of Commerce Board meeting. Councilmember Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors did meet on January 27th. However, we had just received a quarterly report from Shannon Davis, our Executive Director of the Chamber, 1 day prior. So I'll skip the majority of that content since it was presented to the council already. But additional items that came up during the meeting on the 27th with the board. Continuing on with the administration of the Levitt AMP Music Series grant, we are continuing that again into 2022. That grant has been awarded. Additionally, Shannon and then also Joel Todd, the Assistant Director for the Parks and Recreation Department of the city, were recently able to travel out of state to get some additional training from Levitt on the music series there and how to administer that. Additionally, ConocoPhillips doubled their annual contribution to the chamber this year, with the additional funds being specifically earmarked for the music series. So we're excited that we're going to be entering that year with a lot of support for that series, and very excited to see another successful run this year because that's been just an amazing thing for the community. Additionally, the Chamber Board of Directors was not able to hold their board retreat last year, but we'll be bringing that back this year, with the intent to develop a new strategic plan for the organization moving forward. So I'm looking forward to seeing what goals emerge out of that process. I think the most exciting news to come out of our board meeting is there's been a long-standing desire to address the need in our community for healthcare offerings for small businesses and how they can provide that for their employees or just themselves if they're sole owners on that and no employees. But there was a project that was being explored, I believe as recently as a couple of years ago, to offer this through the state chamber, but there was some legal limits that came into play and it was held up in the courts. But anyway, they found a way to work around that through partnership with MODA. And essentially what they're going to be doing is putting together a plan where small businesses in the community who are members of the Chamber of Commerce can actually go through the Chamber of Commerce and purchase low-cost, affordable health care as part of a group to make available really comparable cost to what's available on the exchange, however, at a higher level of offering. So it doesn't really save any money from what they can get on the exchange, but what they're getting for that dollar amount for their employees is quite a bit more. So I guess if you look at what you get for the dollar, it's a much more effective offering, and it'll hopefully service a very strong need in our community for healthcare and small business. So it's very exciting to see this moving forward. The Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau chambers have already offered a similar plan, and it's just going to basically be us offering the same thing and moving in line with that. And lastly, don't forget that next Saturday, the February 19th, we have the Frozen River Fest coming up, and looking forward to getting out there and listening to some live music and enjoy some of the beer from a good number of local breweries. So that is all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your report. Moving on to item 10 on the agenda, City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I'll contribute a little bit more information to something you touched on, which is snow removal. And as you mentioned, this has been a heavier snow year. I was notified Friday that we have used up all the snow budget, which is not atypical on a heavy snow year. And we'll come forward with a proposal to either use contingency funds for that, as we've done in the past, or seek some other remedy. But during these very heavy snow days, I used it as an opportunity to have a more focused conversation with several department heads that are involved in snow removal. Scotty Sundberg, our Streets and Maintenance Manager, Kyle Cornelis, our Airport Manager, Andrew Carmichael, our Parks Director, and even our utility operators do snow removal at different city facilities. And we've started to put down on paper what has been a longstanding conversation, which is reassessing how we utilize all of our resources in terms of people and equipment to meet the various priorities and needs of the city. And so we've started to map out all of the different needs, which include streets, parking lots, parks, event spaces, state sidewalks, et cetera, so that we can communicate back to the council if there are some options to do things a little bit differently. I think Scotty and his team do an exceptional job of meeting the level of standard they can with the resources they're given, but I want to be able to come to you and present some options potentially of how we could decide to do things a little bit differently moving forward if there's an interest to do that. So we're putting that report together. We'll analyze some different ideas, and I hope to bring that back to the council at one of your March meetings. And I'd be happy to pause if there's any questions on snow removal. Part of the benefit of that also will just be as a communication tool to the public. We recognize and want to do a better job of communicating updates that are timely to the public. And by putting this policy together really kind of in a more formal, deliberate way, we'll be in a better position to give regular updates to the public as well.
Any questions for the City Manager? Okay.
Mayor Whitney, one other thing, if I could, just to conclude my report. I wanted to just briefly touch on infrastructure projects. I put in front of you today kind of a draft brochure, and I've also included a spreadsheet that is the formal 5-year capital plan. And I wanted to give these both to you tonight to show you what we did in putting together this brochure. So we started from the officially adopted 5-year plan, and then we eliminated any project that's already been funded, so all the FY22 projects that the council has already appropriated funding for. We also consolidated projects that may have been identified over a 2-year period in the 5-year plan. We've listed them as a single project with the combined budget. And we also made the decision just to eliminate smaller projects. So any project that's on our 5-year plan that's under $100,000, we eliminated from this document, just so that it could be a really compact communication tool to share with our legislative delegates, both at the state and federal level, and so that they hopefully have quick access to the City of Soldotna's priority capital projects when they're presented potentially with funding opportunities. So this draft I wanted to share with you. We're happy to take feedback if you have ideas of how we could best communicate this information. The other thing we did is group it by project type rather than chronologically, so that, for example, all of the streets projects are grouped together in this document, all the parks projects are grouped together, whereas the format of our normal 5-year plan is taking it fiscal year by fiscal year. One other unique thing, and I appreciated, I got a question from a council member this week about this. If you recall, on our 5-year project list, we do have these priorities down at the bottom that were not assigned to a year, and they, in some cases, weren't assigned to a dollar amount. These are projects like the Field House, a new visitor center, riverfront redevelopment. They're listed on our priority list, but not in any particular year. We did include those in this document, and in some cases, in all cases, we assigned a dollar amount to them. The visitor center, for example, we assigned a dollar figure of $7 million. That was going back to previous cost estimates that maybe the chamber had done and presented to us. And we felt okay doing that because, again, this is a tool that we would hope to secure outside funding, grant funding for these projects. So if there was an opportunity or an interest to fund a project like this, we wanted to make sure that it was on the list along with the other projects. Related to this, we have been following updates about the federal infrastructure bill. The federal government put together a website and a guidebook to help communities navigate those different programs. The guidebook itself is 460 pages long, and it details information about literally hundreds of grant programs. And as we're learning more about the scope of this opportunity, I've recognized that I think the city would benefit from having a little bit deeper bench in terms of adding our capacity to go after some of these opportunities. So I'm looking at different ideas, and I'm planning to bring a resolution to the council at your next meeting, potentially authorizing us to go out to bid competitively for grant writing, consulting, and assistance with grant writing services. I see the primary benefit of that not just in writing grant proposals, but in doing that upfront research, because there are so many programs. In some cases, the rules are not yet written. The criteria will be different from each, and I think we would really benefit from a firm or a consultant who has this expertise help us narrow down which of these opportunities may be the most realistic for us to pursue in funding our projects. So I'm happy to hear feedback about that if the council has any. Otherwise, I'll bring forward an action item for you to consider at your next meeting. I've made some phone calls already, but I really do feel that to rise to the level of this federal investment opportunity, we'd be better served by having somebody or a group of folks that can really focus on this task and assist us through this process. And I think that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mayor Whitney.
Any questions from the council? Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney, and thank you, Ms. Queen. So in the capital priorities brochure, is there a way at the end of the description to put what year it is in terms of the fiscal year? So we're not, if somebody says, so the Kieran Street Park upgrades, what year where is that? When are you going to be doing that? And then I'd have to go back and look at this sheet to figure out when it would be, so.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Parker. We'd be happy to add that back. Again, our intention was, I have some conversations with our Public Works Director, Cornelis, and really we were intending this document to serve as our legislative priority request. And in his experience, putting projects into the state's CAPSA system, it was less important what year or what ranking a project had next to it, rather than if it was potentially a good fit for what they were trying to achieve or a specific budget that they thought might be available. But we'd be very happy to add that back so that this is a more comprehensive document.
Because, there potentially could be capital projects that get funded this year by the legislature. So if a legislator's looking at that, let's say the representative for this district is looking at it and identifies the paving at Centennial Park is something that is a priority, and he wants to get funding for it, but it might be further down the list for what we're looking at, so.
Any other questions for the city manager? I do have one quick comment here. It's a beautiful picture here on the front, but what's kind of scary about it is take a looking at how many dead trees from spruce bark beetle are in that, and how one spark would have a pretty devastating effect in that area. So I certainly hope we're still looking for funding and ability to get some of these trees out of there. So that's moving on to the next item on the agenda. And that will be item number 11, public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. And I see no one here in the chamber, And I see no hands raised on Zoom. So we will move on to council comments. Item 12 on the agenda. And we'll start out with Mr. Nelson.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to compliment the memos. They were very, very interesting to read. And I certainly hope some members of the public do take some time to realize what their city staff do, really what we ask of people. And I think everybody's doing an excellent job. So thank you very much for those and for the goals for next year. It'll be interesting to look at those when this comes around at the end of the year. And that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Student Representative Knowles.
We have a new ski meet, so it's going to be on, it's the Region Ski Meet, which is going to be at Saltashi this weekend. And we've been selling pizzagrams since this Monday, and we'll be delivering those tomorrow. And this is really cool, I think. Sorry. I think that the student council will be really excited to read through that as well and look at those new ideas and see how the community will be changing in those ways. So it's exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. It's part of another organization that we're looking at building a new place, and we've purchased land to do it. And speaking about who would construct the new purchase, one of the things in working with him and his company was that if we would, time-wise, if we would set our schedule when he got done with a project he's doing very close to there, that the savings on mobilization and demobilization result of both. And I mentioned that when we look at the field house, the regional sports center, and even new visitor center, it would be interesting if just in our, again, look at planning, if there was any work we could do together to save on mobilization or demobilization. Obviously, those are three significant and very good projects, and wherever we might find ways to cut the cost, particularly as I expect that we could be talking about a bond issue on at least one of them, a lower cost would be better. And so, just as an idea of things that I find the community can be helpful, when you work with other groups and what they're doing, you can cut back on mobilization or demobilization for major projects. I very much support, Madam Manager, a city grant writer. I think the benefits, we are in such a wonderful position in this city because financially we are so solid that we can apply for things that require us to pay up front and then get reimbursed because we have the funds. The good decisions have been made by this council, previous councils, previous administrations is such that it continues, we all continue to benefit from that. And so to me, we are ideally the type of place that should be getting a grant writer. There's just so many different things. When you talk about a 500+ page book of grants, just have somebody even go through it. And so again, I strongly support it. I hope you do bring that forward. One of the awesome places of our community is quality of life. And I think the people, those of us that live here know it. And one of the reasons we have such a strong quality of life are all the people who work in the nonprofits. Just want to just acknowledge there are so many very good people who spend a huge amount of their life and their life's work in nonprofits helping each other. And I know that many of the people sitting around here are parts of those groups. I want to thank all those people. I think it's very helpful. And the last thing I'd like to just mention, when we talk about this, it's an added year on snow removal, and it's very reasonable that we've been sort of, we budget expecting lower, and we add, which is what we're going to do. But when we talk about the departments getting together to discuss how to do a job, particularly once we have the need, it seems to me it might be reasonable in a few months, so when the snow's gone, and people aren't sort of uptight about the snow, if we talk to the members of the public in terms of any ideas they might have, in terms of how snow removal might be done differently, and or I would imagine as all the different groups, again, city departments get together, they may come up with some changes. And so certainly being sure that we allow the public to know about these changes. It just seems to me sometimes there can be the attitude, oh, they never listen or they never do anything, and it's always the same. That's not the case in this city. We've got a good administration. And again, the work that you mentioned, that again, all these different departments, we need to be sure that we are educating the public so that there are some people who are going to complain no matter what we do, no matter what. But there are others who just need to hear all the good things. And the more they hear about the good things going on, the more positive they are about our government, about our community. And so I want to hear about the snow removal. Please, everyone, drive cautiously. Do the very best you can. And also remember, there are some of us that maybe we're not real smart, and we may make some mistakes when there's a lot of snow. And so again, also give us all a break if we do something stupid. And I remember from a number of years ago, and there was the idea of a new change of plowing at first, plowing things into the middle of the road, which saved us another time of having to plow as compared to simply side. And there was a person who decided that she didn't like that, and so she tried to go through them continually and didn't make it, and would call and let us know. And please give us a break also on that in terms of, they do the very best they can, making sure you can get into the different roads, but please don't be a Soldotna Olympian and decide you're going to go through the snow berms to see if you can do it. And I do know the city, and both with public health, or again with the police basically, and CS, we pulled some people out of the snow berms. And so again, to our residents, give us all a break, and please don't go skiing through the snow berms and get stuck. And it's wonderful to live in this town. Thank you.
Mr. Carey, I hope the snow will be gone in a few months, maybe even sooner. Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank the Roads Department for the hard work that they have been doing, and as a number around the room have commented, people are tired of the snow, they're tired of snow blowing, and you just get something cleared and here comes the next storm. So, but it's nice to kind of have a semi-normal winter. If we could just scale it back a little, would be fine. I would like to thank Councilmember Ruffridge, Councilmember Hutchings, the Human Resources Manager, and our interim city clerk for all of the work that we have done the past almost 4 months in recruiting for a new city clerk for the city of Soldotna. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure to attend the 2022 Annual Chamber of Commerce Awards Luncheon today, and it was awesome to see our city and members of our staff and council represented there. The city of Soldotna received a appreciation plaque for continuing their support with the Chamber as a platinum partner. The Chamber is able to do all that it does because of the support of members of our community and organizations that provide both monetary and in-kind support like that to the organization. Additionally, John Zarneski, Jennifer Hester, and their staff received, I believe it was a Government Affairs and Civic Service Award for excellence in profession and what they've done with beautifying the city of Soldotna with all the trees and hydro seeding, and just really just elevating the experience as you go through those highway corridors. There's a lot of appreciation that was vocalized over their excellent work there today at that ceremony. And then lastly, if you haven't heard, our own Councilman Justin Ruffridge won Person of the Year. So, yep. So excellent just seeing all of our city out there represented. So, thank you.
Well, I just have one thing to mention. I know we have the Frozen River Fest, but also there is a cancer program going at Salteshi, a ski contest this weekend, because my granddaughter's coming down from Girdwood to participate. So that ought to be also mentioned. And good night. Thank you.